All right, welcome to video 6. We're going to be talking all about tables. I've mentioned this is my favorite way to operate with data in Excel. I'd highly recommend that you get used to always using tables when you have data in Excel. Don't just keep them as ranges, always convert to tables. So let's look at how to do that. It's pretty easy. First, we're going to start with some tables. I've got some raw data here, and this is how data, might be entered. You might even form it up to look like a table by formatting it really nice, giving it some borders, and putting the top to be a certain color, making it bold. And so then it looks like, hey, I've got a table. And in the visual sense, yes, you do. However, there's a lot of functionality that Excel enables when you create something as an actual table, which is a data type or like a functionality that Excel has. And so I'm going to show you how to do that. Start by copying this raw data over to the area next to it. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit Control V. And now we can convert it into a table. I've got the steps listed. I'll show you two because I've gotten so used to the shortcut here that it's now my default and it saves me a ton of time. Here's the longer manual way. It's to go up to the Insert tab on the ribbon and then go to Table. And you get a dialog box that says Create Table from the range you have selected. And you can indicate whether or not you have headers in your data. So you got a table now, but the quicker way that has become my default because this comes up so often for me, it's worth trying to get in your head, is Alt N T, and there you go, Alt N T. So 3 quick keystrokes and you're at the same point. Saves you just a little bit of time. And we want to make the same choices. We've got headers in our data, and that's the range that we're trying to turn into a table. So now we have this as a table. But we're going to look at a little bit of how these tables work. So now that it's a table, there's a bit of automatic functionality that Excel will allow you to do. There's now a table tab in your ribbon, and there's a whole bunch of things that are now available, including adding a totals row, first last column being banded, using filter buttons or not, and it even allows you to go ahead and format this. This is a really helpful little pro tip, is to format your tables to not look like like it's a default table. The default here is a little bit ugly, to be honest, and I'd highly recommend that you find a table style that's either a best fit for your organization, colors wise, or you can create your own to fit it exactly, or you find one of these other stylings that works for you to represent the data just in a little bit cleaner, different way that makes it presentable. And so this is an example of a type that I like. I think it's clean and it looks good. So now I've got the table over here. I've got it formatted like I want. The tasks I've laid out for you are to go ahead and convert the table like this, apply a table style, and then I want to show the example of adding a new record. I want to show it to both the table and the raw data. If I wanted to add this new record for Emily Adams and it was using the range, I could put it there, and it absolutely is there. But as an example, when I had this formatted before to look like a table, when I add Emily Adams, I do not have the same formatting. Now there's an easy way around that, but why make your life any harder than it has to be? If you have a table and you were to just add this to the bottom, Excel knows what you're trying to do. You're trying to add data to the table, so it goes ahead and incorporates it into the table and automatically applies the formatting that you've chosen. So this is one of the first advantages of having your data represented as a table. The next thing I want to share is the importance of naming a table. So later on, you're going to see that when you reference information in a table, and you've seen examples of this already in the prior classes, that it uses a type of referencing where it uses the table name. So naming it something meaningful is important. Instead of having it named table 5, table 10, table 17, naming it something that represents what is in the table helps to make these references just make a little more sense. So this is clearly some sort of patient encounter information. My shorthand for that has always become ENC. It turns out I must have already used that in this workbook somewhere else because it's saying, hey, you already have an ENC. So I'm going to say an ENC2, just to be quick about it. So that is how you name the table. It is within that table, within the table design tab in the ribbon. To the very far left, there is a table name here, and you can name it. So now we've got a table, and it's named properly. I do want to show you, just in case you need to kind of reverse your decision for some reason, how to go ahead and convert that back to a range. And it's pretty straightforward. Be clicked anywhere into this table, and then the table design tab is available in the ribbon. Back here in the first set of options under tools, there is a convert to range. It's going to make sure you want to, because you're being an idiot most of the time that you are choosing to convert it back to a range. So it tries to stop you, but do what you have to do. All right, that is how to convert data into a table. All right, next, structured references. So this is just going to show some of what you've seen in past videos as to how data is referenced when you're referencing it from a table. We're going to do it again with this example of what does it look like in the table, what does it look like in the range, to point out some other things that happen in your formulas when you're pointing to these two different setups for your data. So the tasks I've got for you is to start by doing a sum column that's using a structured reference. And so I'm going to do a sum of the table. And let's go ahead and sum, I don't know, cost. I think that makes sense. And it looks like that's what I have written out in the instructions anyway. Because I'm referencing a table, you see that nice, I think they call it a structured reference. And so it says the sum of the cost from the encounter table and the cost column. And so I get an answer of $9,150. I'll just quickly make that an accounting format. Now let's do a sum of the cost column over here in our range. It's done in a similar way. I'll point to the range. I'm going to summarize, close it, and hit enter. We've got the same value because I've got the same information there. Of course, this is to teach a point that I will show you a little bit later. Next, let's calculate cost per day. On the table side, you are going to say equals to that total cost divided by the length of stay, or the days that they were here. So you have cost per day happening. And then that formula reads almost like a logical statement. At cost, or this line item cost, divided by length of stay. And so you have a pretty clear demonstration of what is happening in this equation. If I were to do that over here in the range, it's just going to be a cell reference. So we'll have total cost, which is in L15, divided by length of stay, which is in K15. Now, you can click in and look at the colors to figure out what it's doing, but even so, you have to map, with your eyes. All right, blue to blue, so cost is first, divided by red, which is length of stay. All right, this is doing the cost divided by length of stay. Now, certainly possible, but especially as you build more and more complex functions, it becomes difficult to read and interpret what's going on there, as opposed to an equation that reads almost like a sentence. Cost divided by length of stay. So another advantage I just want to point out, and of course I will keep beating this dead horse. Let's show another advantage. Dynamic updates. This is the major advantage of using tables as opposed to ranges. So I'm going to add data to this table, and I'm going to add data to this range. And when I do that, you're going to see that the table does what I showed you before. It automatically recognizes what I'm trying to do, incorporates it into the table, and if you have a quick eye, you saw that the sum equation we were using earlier already reflects that addition. Also, the cost per day column went ahead and calculated that same formula for the new row. However, over here in our range, we are going to have to update this, which seems like, oh, that's no big deal. What's the difference? Most of the time when you're building in Excel, you have formulas all over the place that you build over time. And so this small change can send a cascade of updates that become needed for you to hunt and find in order to make sure that your information is still accurate. So the big difference is not just, I don't want to point and click again, I don't want to pull this down. It is accuracy. So I know, because I've set it up as a table and made this sum calculation to sum this column, that I am going to get the sum of all the information in this column in this table, no matter what gets added. That's the key. That's the key that we're really looking for there. So that would be called like a dynamic update. All right, so that is a little more on tables. We're going to keep going on tables. Let's take a look at the totals row. And so here we have the same table. And the task I've given you is to add a totals row and then to do three different types of things in the totals row. So adding a totals row is available in the table design options in the table design tab of the ribbon. And you're going to see that in the table style options, one of those choices is a totals row. Now it made a default decision for us, but I'll show you how we can make different decisions. In my tasks for learners I have down here, I've asked you to go ahead and get the total cost in the cost column. So let's head there. You see there's a drop down available to us. And so we will choose sum. Now we have the sum of cost. Then I say give the average of length of stay. Here we go. We can choose a different aggregation for length of stay in average. Then on cost per day, I go ahead and say grab the maximum. So max of cost per day. So that flexibility is nice. I would say that it's not represented ideally because this row still says total, which can be quite confusing. Now you can choose something here and then it will apply it all the way across, and then this will, say whatever it says. But you may also want to just override this and say aggregations or something like that. I don't know. Whatever you want to call it, to make sure that people don't assume everything here is summed if you aren't summing everything. But that's how you put a totals row on. That's how you use it. Go ahead and operate at your own risk there, how you want to work with that. All right, sorting and filtering within tables. We have seen a little bit of a introduction to this. I'm not going to go too much deeper because to be honest, it's quite self-explanatory and you can figure it out with watching it without watching a video. I'll still show you. The table is already set up to do sorting and filtering from the buttons that are here at the top of the table in the top of each column. If those aren't available, you're not seeing them, which is really unlikely. Someone has unchecked a box in the tables tab of the ribbon over here that says filter button. So if I were to uncheck that, they will not show. Check it, they will show. So if they're missing, that's where you need to go, or it might not actually be a table, even though it's formatted like a table. Maybe I'll show you that too after this real quick. So the filtering here and the sorting is both done through this choice at the top of each column, where I can choose to sort that column by Z to A or A to Z when it's a text column. And when it's a numerical column, I can sort from largest to smallest or smallest to largest. Another option that is available is to sort by colors. And so if I were to be using this table in a way where I'm highlighting information that maybe I want to reference back to, I see an anomaly in this record, I want to make sure I come back to that, I end up seeing an anomaly in this record. Later on, when that information is a little scattered across the table, I could say, go ahead and filter this by that color or sort it by the color. So I can say, just give me the yellow at top. There we go. So that is the sorting. And if you need to do more advanced sorting, it's still available in the sort option, which is in the data tab of the ribbon. And then you can do things like sort by more than one level, like let's sort first by blood type and then by medical condition, or vice versa. You can change the order of those. So when you need to do something a little more complex with sorting, you're going to want to choose the button up here in the data tab. And that's the basics of it. We didn't talk about filtering much. So filtering this is also done in the same place. You can see that there is some basic filtering of just clicking options or unclicking options here in the bar. Especially with text columns, it actually becomes more useful to have this search capability here. So I may know the patient's name, I may know the medical condition, let's say, that I want to filter to. And so I might come here, and assuming it's some long list that's hard to read, I may say, give me all of the cancer only items. And so now I've got just the patients with cancer. In a numerical column, you get some options besides just clicking individual items. There's some numbers filters, like you can imagine, it's greater than this value, less than, and kind of every variation of that. Top 10, above average, below average, all sorts of options for how to filter based on the value of that column. All right, that is filtering in tables. That is using tables overall. I hope you fall in love with them the way that I have. There's a lot of functionality that makes your life easier when you're working with data in Excel. Thanks for joining me for this video. Can't wait to see you for the next one.